Chapter 27, Simon. Number one on the list of things I didn't want to see when I walked into Voodoo to pick Charlie up from work. Her, shirtless, with the guy she used to fuck. I've never been the jealous type before, but something about Charlie fueled my most basic instincts. If Khan hadn't been holding a tattoo gun, I might have decked him. I started boxing at the Naval Academy and still made sure I hit a bag and got a workout in at least 5 days a week. Khan might have a couple inches on me, but I could take him. I was pretty sure he'd gone Army, so we might spill some blood before I finished him. I fought to bury my emotions when he lifted the tattoo gun away from her skin and smirked as I crossed the room. I kept my tone light. Charlie, sweetheart, why aren't you wearing a shirt? The answer was obvious, and I was probably being a dick by asking, but I couldn't hold it in. Charlie twisted to smile at me and then looked over her shoulder at the burst of color that hadn't been there when I left her at the Dirty Dog this morning. She looked as relaxed as I've ever seen her outside of bed. Do you like it? I stepped into the small room and checked out her new tat. Vivid fireworks exploding across the creamy skin on her shoulder blade. Blue, red, green, and golden yellow, artfully shaded and incredibly detailed. This time, I was the one smiling. She marked herself permanently with a memory we made together. I leaned down, ignoring Khan, and kissed her for all I was worth. I heard his stool roll away, but wasn't sure if he left the room. Regardless, I wasn't stopping to kiss until I was damn well good and ready. When I finally pulled away, I kissed the top of her other shoulder. I love it. Although I wasn't entirely sure what it meant to Charlie, I could never guess what was going on in her head. I was going to take it as a sign that she was committed to this, to us. Can you get the night of the 4th of July off? It's a Saturday. She glanced towards Khan, where he stood leaning against the doorway. You've had a lot of Saturdays nights off lately, he replied. I was ready to argue, but he continued. But I'm always telling you that you work too damn much anyway, so go for it. Khan turned to me with a mocking stare. What's the occasion? Or don't I want to know? Hell, I hoped to warm Charlie up to the idea gradually, but I didn't want her to say no. I needed her next to me. Just some festivities. Charlie stiffened. Public festivities? She asked. Let's talk about it later, yeah? I said, hoping we could have this conversation without an audience. Thankfully, she nodded. You mind waiting a few more minutes while Khan finishes up? I leaned down and kissed her shoulder again. As long as it takes. I shot her a pointed look. She bit her lip at my double meaning. I never claimed to be subtle. I stepped aside for Khan to come back in and get settled on his stool. He picked up where he left off, and Charlie slipped back into her relaxed state as soon as the buzz of the tattoo gun filled the room. Her easy mood lasted about 3 steps outside Voodoo. So tell me about 4th of July. It's a holiday celebrating American independence. She shot me a sidelong look and waited for a serious answer as we walked in the direction of my car. Parking in New Orleans had never been irritating to me until I met Charlie. She lived and worked in some of the most unparkable places. I opened her door and she climbed in. I rounded the hood and hopped in the driver's seat. The silence in the car forced me to explain. It's an event called Fighting for Freedom that's being held on the steamboat Orleans. It's put on by my 2 nonprofits focused on serving veterans that I'm partnering with to get my own off the ground. There's a dinner and silent auction before the fireworks. I pulled away from the curb. Your own? I looked over and realized I hadn't yet shared it with her. She was quickly becoming the most important person in my life, but every time I saw her, my thoughts were filled with nothing but Charlie. So it's a little wonder we hadn't discussed it. I explained further as I drove. I'm starting a nonprofit to offer PTS counseling and alternative therapies to vets who prefer not to seek treatment at the VA for whatever reason. My lawyer has already formed the corporation and we're working on the application for tax exempt status. There's still a ton of work to be done, but it's all starting to come together. That's why this 4th of July thing is so important, because there will be a lot of people there who support veterans causes who I'll need on my side to make the Kingman Project a success. Wow, that's amazing. If you need help with pro forma financial statements, I'm your girl. Oop, she just let out another clue. My gaze snapped to hers for a second before refocusing on the road. What the hell? Pro forma financial statements? Why? I started to ask her to explain, but she interrupted my question. Wait, Kingman, was he the pilot who? Her change of subject derailed my thoughts as my stomach dropped, the same way it did every time I relive the explosion in my head. It should have been me. Yeah, he's the one who saved me. His widow will be there too. She remarried now to a friend of mine. I'd like you to meet her. I turned on her street and snagged a spot not far from Harriet's house. I put the SUV in park and turned to face Charlie. She was frowning and picking at the black nail polish on her thumb. Her body language was all wrong. She didn't look up when she said, "I'm not sure I can do that." A cold feeling crept into my chest. What do you mean you're not sure you can do that? The event, meet his widow. They'll be press, right? Cameras? Yeah, but it's no big deal. A few photo ops and it's done. It's for a good cause and it's pretty painless. I'm not a photo op kind of girl, Simon. I told you before and I wasn't kidding. She finally looked at me and the stubborn set of her jaw pissed me off. I tried one more time to explain how much this event meant to me. I need you with me for this, Charlie. It's important to me. I want you there next to me. I should go. She reached for the door handle and the grip I had on my temper snapped. Now, Simon, you're not getting out of this car until you tell me what the hell you're hiding from that you can't risk a goddamn picture in the fucking paper and pro forma financial statements? What the fuck, Charlie? You've got to give me something here. She stood before slowly turning to face me. Her glare was ice, and her walls were up higher than I ever seen. Don't talk to me like that, and don't tell me what to do. It's not going to work out how you think. Okay. I slammed my palms against the steering wheel, helpless to stop this conversation from spiraling out of control. God damn it, I just want to understand. I could help you if you let me, but you won't give me anything. It's driving me crazy. I've made it pretty fucking clear that I'm in love with you and I think you love me. I gestured between us. This isn't going to work unless you let me in. And if you can't do that, what's the point in even trying? I wanted to take my words back as soon as they escaped my lips, but I couldn't. They needed to be said. The ice in her gaze melted into glossy tears. She blinked them back, not letting them spill. I knew what she was going to say before she spoke. Don't, I thought, don't say it, Charlie. She opened her mouth and I reinforced myself for the blow I knew was coming. I guess there really is no point. We both know I'm no good for you anyway. She opened the door like she hadn't just ripped my heart out my chest. Goodbye, Simon. I swallowed, determined to hold it together. You said you wouldn't break my heart. The words sounded like they've been dragged over a gravel road before I ground them out. She turned back to face me, tears streaking down her face. No, I didn't. I said I wouldn't do it without shattering mine. Ooh. She dashed away the tears with the side of her hand. Her voice shook as she said, I didn't lie about that. She shut the door and crossed the street without looking back. I watched, unable to comprehend what the fuck just happened, as she fumbled with the lock and finally slipped inside the gate. She was gone. Chapter 28, Charlie. I buried my face in Huck's fur and let my tears soak into his rough coat as I listened to the continuous buzzing coming from the intercom. I could have written the scene before it happened. It was inevitable. I should have been better prepared for it, but I hadn't factored in just how much it would hurt to walk away from him. When the buzzing finally stopped, I knew Simon was gone. I sniffled back a sob and Huck's big brown eyes rested on me. I could only imagine how pitiful I looked. The raw emotions were too much to handle. I didn't want to think, didn't want to feel. I needed to be numb, or I might not be able to stop myself from going after him. I was only a few blocks from Bourbon Street, so I go with the obvious solution. Get drunk and lose myself in the crowd. Lose myself, period. I was good at that. I knew I should call Ev or Delilah, but then I have to rehash everything that had happened tonight, and I wasn't ready for that. So I go by myself, because at the end of the day, I was the only person I could rely on anyway. So, laissez le bon tempo rouler. That was French. I slammed shot after shot, shaking my ass on the dance floor, shoving away every guy who attempted to get close, just like I shoved Simon away. My actions were a sadly accurate metaphor for my life. The lights were hypnotic and my buzz was rolling into straight up hammered. I stumbled to the bar and slapped down a 20. 2 more shots, tequila. The bartender didn't even blink before taking my money and pouring the liquor. Lime? No need. I tossed one back and smacked the glass down on the wooden bar before wiping my hands across my mouth. I looked down at my ink-covered skin and smiled sardonically. Sardonically. I know the word, y'all. The good girl falling for the bad boy story might have happily ever afters, but you never really heard about what happened when the good guy fell for the bad girl. Apparently this. I lifted the other shot in a silent toast to Simon and tipped it back. He deserved better than me. If things had continued on between us, I would have eventually dragged him into the suspicious and contempt that surrounded the girl I was pretending not to be. I looked at the bartender and pulled out another 20. 2 more, please. Then I'd be done. I'd walk my ass home and pass out. I'd call in hungover tomorrow and Ev would be knocking on my door and dragging me out the bed. I love that girl. The thought cued me into the fact that I had indeed officially passed buzz. I downed the last 2 shots and stumbled my way out of the bar into the mass of humanity on Bourbon. I caught a glimpse of tits and ass as I made my way up the street. I spotted Jimmy on the corner. Surprisingly, a hot dog sounded delicious. I hadn't been by to see Jimmy since shortly after Huck's accident when I promised Simon I wouldn't walk home alone anymore. Jimmy! I called out as I pushed through the crowd. Miss Charlie, I ain't seen you in weeks. Jimmy snapped his tongs in my direction. Where you been? Where's my boy Huck's Finn? And what can I get for you this fine evening? I tried to sort his questions out in my tequila-soaked brain. Huck's at home. He got hit by a car, so I haven't been walking home for a while. This guy, he didn't think it was safe for me by myself. I winced at my disjointed explanation. Jimmy narrowed his gaze at me. You done tied one on. It wasn't a question. He looked around. You by yourself tonight? I nodded. It's cool. You know, I'm not far from home. I tried hard to avoid slurring my words. I was like a drunk teenager trying to fool her parents. I still don't like it. He handed me my hot dog without me having to order. I handed him the rest of the money I had on me. He tried to refuse, but I stuffed the bills in the pocket of his aprons. See you tomorrow, Jimmy. It's a date, Miss Charlie. I wandered a few more steps before I took a bite. I chewed and I swallowed and then gagged. Bad idea. Tequila and hot dogs were not going to coexist peacefully, but I didn't want to waste it. So I kept walking on a drunken quest to find one of those homeless pups that wandered the street to pull in money for their owners, if it was good enough for Huck. I finally spotted one sitting on the corner beyond the barricades that blocked the cars from Bourbon Street. The end of his leash was knotted to a pipe. It looked like his owner had just tied him up and left him. He was brittle like Huck, which made me smile. I staggered forward and offered the hot dog. Here you go, baby, eat up. He swallowed it down in two head-tossing bites, just like Huck. What the fuck, bitch? I spun around and registered a man striding out of the shadows. He wasn't one of the hippie-looking homeless guy. He looked mean. Sorry. I'll just be going. I looked at the dog and started to turn back toward the crowd, only a dozen or so yards away. I don't think so. His fingers bit into my bare arm as he swung me around and dragged me down the dark street. I started to scream, but the back of his hand caught my cheek and my head snapped sideways. The air in my lungs evaporated as icy fear rushed in to take its place. Memories of the last close call assailed me. I had no Huck this time, no way to protect myself. He was patting down my pockets looking for money while I just stood there dumbly. You gotta have something, fucking bitches always got something, he muttered, still gripping my arm. He tossed my cell phone into the gutter. My drunken haze was ripped away as the reality of my situation solidified. I ran my knee up into his groin and yanked against his grasp as he doubled over. But his grip was too tight. His dog growled and I stayed just shy of the snapping teeth that had looked so harmless only moments before. I rotated my arm trying to twist out of his hold. But he was faster and I felt a slash of pain across my side. I looked down the slice of my white tank top as it turned red. He froze, as if realizing what he just done, as if the action had been a reflex. In his shock, he dropped the knife, and it clattered to the sidewalk near the dog. I kneed him in the balls again. This time, he stumbled and let go of my arm. I ran towards the crowd. You better run, bitch, he yelled after me. I staggered down Bourbon Street, clutching my arm to my side as hot, sticky blood seeped out of the wound. I spotted a cop and started towards him, but then common sense intruded. Cops meant a hospital and questions. I turned away, tripping over the curb and stumbling into the doorway next to a strip club. The doorman glanced over at me, then did a double take. Whoa, sweetheart, you're bleeding. Fuck. He fumbled for his phone. I'll call 911. No, don't. I started to sweat and dizziness assailed me. Could you call someone else for me? He held the phone, poised to dial. Number? I rattled off one I knew by heart. The bouncer held the phone out and I pressed it to my ear. He picked up on a second ring. Hello? I need you. Okay. Chapter 29, Charlie. I woke up wearing nothing but my bra and underwear in a bed that wasn't my own. I stretched and winced at the pain in my side, the pounding in my head, and the throbbing of my cheek. I groaned. I was a total shit show. Fragmented memories of last night came flooding back as I surveyed the very familiar room and the man in bed beside me. His blue eyes flickered open as if he'd just been lying there waiting for me to wake. He stared at me for a long moment before speaking. I wonder if this is when this is getting ready to happen. She's going to have to tell him. Scared the shit out of me last night, Lee. I tried to recall exactly what the hell had happened. I was calm. It was mostly a drunken blur laced with heart-stopping fear. I don't remember much after the phone call. That's because you didn't fucking make it through the phone call. You passed out, went into shock. Bouncer had to tell me where the fuck you were. I paid him $400 because you dropped his phone and shattered the screen. Well, that and he was a stand-up guy and used his shirt to stop the bleeding before I got there. I chanced to glance down at my side. There was no stitches, only an angry red seam. I looked at the con. No hospital? His snapping blue eyes turned serious. Did you really want me to announce your whereabouts to the FBI, Charlotte? Ooh, Con, no. Ooh, because he said FBI and Charlotte. All the blood drained from my face. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Fear slithered up my spine. How? How long? Jesus, give me some credit. You really think I hire a woman with no ID, clearly running from something, and just leave it at that? I guess not. My voice faltered on the words. If he figured it out, that meant that anyone else could too. Fuck me. The illusion that I had any control over my situation died a tragic death. He shook his head. Definitely not. I need to know what kind of trouble might be following you. He propped himself up on an elbow. I don't know why you're so surprised. I mean, I was more than just some dumb grunt in the army. I was special forces. I've still got buddies who work in intel. All it took was me sending a picture of you, calling in a few favors, and a misappropriation of some government resources. But Khan interrupted me to continue his explanation. Before you started in on the tats and found your attitude, you practically screamed, "Good girl," on the run. I had to know why. And then there was the fact that I was planning on fucking you pretty much from the minute you walked through the door. I gave him a dirty look in response to his very Khan-like blunt statement, but my fear started to dissipate. If Khan had pulled strings with military intelligence, who'd presumably use sophisticated face recognition software to identify me, then it was possible I wasn't completely screwed. I pulled the sheet tighter against me, still trying to process everything. Why didn't you ever say anything? We've all got our secrets. Yours is just a hell of a lot bigger than most. I can respect the fact that you're not looking to be found, that you wanted to leave it all behind. I'm also damn sure you weren't in on the scheme dear old dad pulled. My heart thumped against my rib at his statement. And how do you know that? You wouldn't accept a raise after we slept together because it would make you feel like a whore. That's not the kind of character I expect from a girl who helped her dad steal $125 billion. Maybe I started to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. I had to force them out. Maybe I didn't want that raise because I already had plenty of money from, you know. You look like you're about to puke just saying that. Unless you straight up tell me you did it, there's no way in hell I'll believe it. I waited for him to ask, to make me tell him conclusively, but he didn't. You're not going to ask me? Told you already. Don't need to. I don't deserve friends like you. Tears stung my eyes. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. Baby, you deserve a hell of a lot better than you give yourself credit for, and that includes good friends. Thank you, I whispered. I shifted, and the pinch in my side reminded me of my injury. I pulled the sheets away to study my first knife wound. Lovely. Hopefully, it would be my one and only. How did you fix me? He peered down. Super glue. It does a good job under most circumstances. This isn't the first knife wound I've dealt with, and it wasn't all that deep. I was glad you were out when I cleaned it, though. Anyway, you'll be fine. He skimmed a finger across my throbbing cheek. Gonna have a little shiner, though. I love to meet the guy who did this. They'll never find his body. I looked up at Khan's word. A cold, determined mask had settled over his features. Most of the time, I forgot that Khan had served in the army, that undoubtedly he killed people. Like me, it could be hard to see past his ink. Any other injuries I didn't see last night, Lee? His jaw was set, as if he was bracing himself for what I might say. I started to shake my head but stopped when it felt like my brain might fall out. He didn't touch me. Well, other than to knife me, asshole. I looked down at my arms and the finger-shaped bruises marked them. I held them out for Khan to see. I guess you can add more bruises and a hangover to the list, but that's all. Meant to ask you about that. Khan gently tilted my chin up as if he wanted to make sure he had my attention. What the fuck were you doing getting hammered by yourself and then wandering off into trouble? You're smarter than that. Where the fuck was Dutchison while this was going down? I pulled my chin out of his grasp and looked down at the sheet. I don't know. It was an honest answer. I had no idea where Simon had gone after I walked away and hadn't looked back. I still couldn't believe I'd done that. It hadn't been my finest moment. What do you mean? He left you there. I'm going to kick his... I laid a hand on Khan's arm. No, it's not his fault. He wasn't there. I guess I broke up with him last night. The last word came out in a single breath. Khan pulled back. You left here all sunshine and rainbows high on your new tat, and you're telling me that between then and getting knifed, you guess you broke up with the guy you're head over ass in love with? I fingered the edge of the sheet. Yeah. Jesus, Lee, only you. Action-packed night. Yeah, I said. Khan rolled off the bed and headed toward the doorway. I'll get you some ibuprofen for the hangover and everything else that ails you. You can hang here as long as you want, and you officially have the day off. I've got to head down and open the shop in a few. I've got an appointment at 2. I scanned the room but didn't see Khan's clock. What time is it? He looked down at his watch. 1:30. I bolted upright and my stomach rolled in time with my pounding head. Shit, I'm supposed to be at work. I called Ev. She's cool. I moved my head slower when I looked over at him. What did you tell her? That you got drunk last night, needed a place to crash, and we're going to be too hungover to make it in. We're going to be too hungover to make it in. She didn't ask me too many questions, but I'm sure she'll have plenty for you later. I grimaced. I'm not looking forward to that conversation. Oh, and I called Harriet too. She's keeping an eye on Huck. I rubbed my swollen face. I was racking up debt all over town because of last night. I carefully swung my leg over the side of the bed and looked around for my jeans. I spotted them crumpled up on the floor in the corner. I stood, wobbling a little and holding my side. When the super glue seam didn't tear open, I didn't puke after 2 steps. I figured I would probably live through the morning. I grabbed my jeans and my bloody, ruined tank top from beneath them. The shirt I tossed in the garbage. I shook out my black skinny jeans and saw several dark, crusty splotches. Shit. I thought for a second about tossing them in the trash too, but they were my favorite jeans. I didn't know how to get blood out of denim, but apparently I was about to learn. I crossed the Khan's dresser to grab a shirt. I pulled out a giant gray t-shirt stamped Army across the chest and flinched at the tug on my wound. My actions last night undoubtedly qualified me as too stupid to live. All of my actions. Getting that drunk alone and walking away from Simon. Why was I giving him up before I absolutely had to? It might have been naive, but I was still holding out some hope that I could crack the damn code. And provided I could get Simon on board with me, staying in the shadows when it came to his public life, maybe this could still work for at least a little bit longer. Last night had seemed like the only answer was walking away before I let myself fall any further. But who was I kidding? I was already too far gone. What was the point in trying to guard my heart now? But what if Simon gave me another ultimatum? It would be a deal breaker. I pushed the thoughts aside. I had to try. Getting knifed in a dark alley gave a girl some perspective. I thought about what Ev had said about some things being worth fighting for. Whatever happened next, I could let it in like this. I couldn't let it in like this. Khan strode into the room, interrupting my musing. He held out a glass of water and dropped 3 ibuprofens into my hand. I swallowed them obediently and drank the entire glass. You good? I nodded and followed him out of the bedroom. I'll walk you down then. He paused as we reached the sofa and I sat to pull on my chucks. Shit, you need a ride home. I can't let you walk. Not like this. It's broad daylight. It's no big deal. And you got knifed last night. He ran a hand through his shaggy hair. I'm giving you a ride home. No, my tone was firm. Seriously, I'll be fine. I've got some shit to figure out, and walking helps me think. And it's not like it's even that far. Khan scrawled at me, looked down at his watch. No. I glared back. I'm walking. Don't push me. I gestured to my side. You know what I did to the guy who did this? Khan's eyes narrowed as he shook his head. I kneed his balls up into his esophagus twice. He exhaled a long breath and rubbed a hand across his face. I could see just a glimpse of the weariness left over from his sleepless night. A sleepless night I was responsible for. I could see that I won when he relaxed the stiff set of his shoulders. Fine, but call me when you get there or I'll be beating down your goddamn door. It's a deal. I followed him down into the shop and waited for him to unlock the door. Stepping out onto the sidewalk, I had to shade my eyes against the glare of the midday sun. I looked up at Khan. I didn't deserve friends like him. You saved my ass. I pressed my hands against his chest and leaned up on my tiptoes to kiss his stubbled jaw. So thank you for last night and everything before that too. He cupped the left side of my face, thumb brushing lightly across my tender cheekbones. Anytime, Lee. That's what friends are for. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead, my bruised cheek, and finally a brush across the corner of my mouth. Take care of yourself, girl. No more close calls. You're too important. Give me a call when you get home. Don't fucking forget, you hear? I nodded. He snagged my hand as I started to pull away, giving it a playful squeeze. I'll see you tomorrow, Khan. Damn right. I'm not giving you another day off this week. I tugged my hand from his grip and grinned at him before walking in the direction of home. I had a sliver of hope and a hell of a lot to figure out. It was a good thing I had the day off because it was going to take more than walking 9 blocks to do it. That's the end of chapter 29. Okay, so Khan was the one who did the background check and knew this whole time. I think he assumed that she must have told Simon. And wow, so if Khan can do it and he got connections, that means that Simon can do it because he got connections. If Simon don't do it, that means his mama might do it. Oh, so, all right. So this chapter was good. I liked this chapter. I felt like, yeah, girl, drinking by yourself, 23, a young lady in the street of New Orleans. What was you thinking? I mean, yeah, you shouldn't have done that, but I'm glad that she didn't get hurt, you know what I'm saying? And anything else from this chapter? There's nothing much more from this chapter. So I'm going to see y'all in the next chapter, which is chapter 30. We have how many more left? I think it was 46. So we got 16 more chapters to go. Bye.